what we need. And hey, guys, it's one of the things we got with the Mad Doctor, Adega Outlaw. He writes extremely talented science fiction novels. This guy knows his shit. He tells you a story. He spins you a yarn. You are hooked from start to finish. It's creative. It's imaginative. These characters come to life. These are the people that need to be going forward and pushing boundaries. And
one of the things about Adega's writing, which I noticed, now that I've read a couple of his works, but one of the things that I love about his writing, and this is a skill, it has a tempo and speed to it. But for example, I want to say that his books are a fast read, but they're not. What they are is that they're a quick read when they need to be, but then when you need to be introspective about what's happening in the story, the way he writes it makes you slow down and be introspective, and then he takes you back up again. It's brilliant the way he does it, and he does it through dialogue and through narration of the story action. So yeah, huge fan of his works.
I love a good bit of dialogue. So you're saying the pacing is on point, exactly where
pacing, it's one of the few, I wouldn't say one of the few times, it is one of the few times. For a lot of the stuff that I read, he's one of the few authors, especially in science fiction, where it's like reading the book is like watching the movie, meaning that, when you're watching a movie and there's certain parts that are going to go really fast, like action, and other parts that might hit you emotionally and they slow down for you mentally, but time is still moving at the same rate. And that's the thing, when you read his book, you're still reading the pages at the same rate, but what you're experiencing varies depending on what's happening in the storyline. And that is a sign of a great author.
Wow. I made it work. I'm always nervous about those things.
We knew you could do it.
Hello, folks. There's no big fanfare, no story or anything that's going on other than just some questions that were asked of me. And I brought in my friend Tommy to help me out. He can ask the questions. He can elaborate on them. Fish more info out of me so I don't feel like a nerd reading my own questions, although none of these are my own questions. Also, he's read my stuff, so he may be able to give you some insights into things. At least you've read the sci-fi portion that's out. I know Lady Mist has gone through pretty much everything I've done that I put on YouTube.
Absolutely fantastic stuff that you're doing, Doc. And I know, a lot of people are always talking about we need to be able to add to the culture since the culture is being taken away by these, how to put it, cultural vampires, if you will. So you're giving back to everybody what they're losing by way of these mainstream companies right now. And I think that your work is tremendously needed right now in this day and age of things that are just so humdrum. They're so agenda driven the entire way, where you can't even sit down and enjoy these books without getting irritated because so much of this stuff is crammed into it. You're giving everybody an outlet to sit there and enjoy themselves, to open their imagination again, and just be able to sit back and have fun.
Wow, I appreciate that. Anyway, I've known Tommy for a while, and again, one of the things about him, he's completely honest. I have never known him to be deceptive. And another thing, he's brutally honest. He will not hold back. And I'm going to turn it over to you. Pretty much run this the way you would think would be best if you were going to interview somebody. So let's have it.
Okay, well, first off, let's go ahead and thank everybody that has stopped into the chat already. Thank you for being here and listening to us rant and talk to the doc. We're going to pick his brain like he was a fish named Wanda, and we're going to have a little bit of fun while we're doing it. Thank you, Kay, for being here. Lady Mist, be sure to share the stream out there. Let other people know that we're having fun, and we're going to sequester the doc on the stand.
Okay, now we got the Joker pick done. We can get a little serious right here. The guy, he always just makes a random appearance. It's not my fault. But some of these questions were prepared for somebody else. Loki, if you're around or if you pop in, thanks for helping out with some of this stuff. So we're going to get into some of the ones that were prepared. And, of course, I'm going to be asking you some stuff that I think is pertinent to everything that you've done with your story. So we'll start off with what would be your first words of advice for aspiring writers, for those people that actually want to get into this themselves, the leaps, the bounds, the hurdles, what they can expect to have to go through and overcome?
Advice is the same across the board from all the authors that I've gotten to meet. Hey, Stephen Ransom joined us. It's pretty much just start. That seems to be universally the hardest thing for a lot of people that have ideas. Even if it's just writing it's more than you had done the day before. So just start. Now, my pitfalls with me wasn't so much getting started. I found that, and some people, if you find it in the books, let me know, because my biggest issue is with homonyms. And I try and catch them, but sometimes I miss. Editors will miss. Google and Microsoft Word will miss.
I'll tell you, somebody won't miss. I will never miss. Doc. Never miss. Sorry, I couldn't help that one.
Okay, Tommy's sense of humor can be quite dark sometimes, so just. But no, that's one of the big ones was with, and I've mentioned this before, is with rain. Rain is easy; it rains outside. But when you're talking about the reign of a king or reigns on a bridle for a horse, they're spelled different, and I will mix those. So it takes me time to work through them, but that's a minor thing. The biggest thing for someone who wants to do it is just start. Doesn't matter how you do it. Just take 5 minutes a day. That's 5 minutes closer to your goal, to sharing your idea, your imagination. That's all.
I think you could also add into that, you just never know what somebody else might enjoy. I mean, for an idea that you might think is mediocre or lackluster, to somebody else that story might actually resonate with them. And I understand where you're coming from, what you're saying with that, Doc, because one of the things I used to do is I used to play in a band. I know I've talked to you about it, I've talked to a few other people, and one of the things that always really struck me is when I would write music, is the reaction that I would get from other people. That would be like, oh my God, that really resonates with me. That really means something to me because I went through something similar. And your story writing does that with some people. I've heard it from other people where they say, well, they really understand that your story resonates with them. Some people actually have said that your story almost feels like a little bit of here and now to a small degree. So getting back to the starting with the writing, there's another question that's actually tied in the first one. So how do you start a writing project? Can you take us through the steps when you start organizing your ideas?
All right. I'm different than a lot of people. Hey, RC, he's an author. If you guys want, he's probably, and he doesn't believe me when I say it, but for me, when it comes to horror, I think he writes it better than anybody I've read. Now, granted, my reading and experiencing of different horror genres is about mediocre. I haven't done a ton, and I'm not shy of it. So I'm kind of middling, but he's the superior. And yeah, okay. But for me to start a project, almost universally, it's when I'm really tired. And my imagination starts to take hold. My subconscious. I trained my mind when I was a kid to deal with pain, and I can get close to the subconscious to kind of open up my mind, and then it's like a daydream almost, that an idea will come into my head. It could come from anything. Could be watching an archaeological show. It could be listening to music, which is more often than not, when I'm trying to doze off or meditate, I'm listening to music, and then an idea will pop into my head. And from that, it's pretty easy for me to accelerate through an entire story in my mind. And then it's just a matter of putting it down. Wording it comes not too difficult for me. The key that I tell other people is, when you have your idea and you start putting it down, do not repeat words as much as possible. Do not use current lingo. You don't want to use groovy if you're in the 60s. You don't want to use dude, those type of things if you want it to be timeless. unless the story is set in a specific time frame. Like if you're writing about somebody in the 60s, you want 60s lingo. But if you want something to be timeless, you have to take that out of there and use a language that would be most consistent with what you think would be still enduring 50 years, 100 years from now. The great authors have done that, and I try to emulate that. So yeah, that's it. It's pretty much a music-induced daydream for the most part, and then
taking a very unbiased approach in the way that you word everything.
Yeah.
Now, I know what you're talking about as far as like the daydreaming stuff. I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but there's been a few times where I've gotten ideas. Like, for example, when I was in the band, I would be sleeping and have a dream about a song and literally just wake up out of a deep sleep and start writing down the song.
There's a lot of people that do that. A lot of people. When they wake up from sleep, you hear of quite a few people will put, like if they have a problem that they went to bed with, they have a notepad by their bed, they wake up, the solution's there. You being a musician, you go to sleep thinking of music, something new comes out of that subconscious. And more often than not, it's quite brilliant. I'm going to have to listen to your album sometime.
Yeah, we only have a few copies left. I know the old guitar player had the bulk of all the CDs that we had printed, but I'm pretty sure somewhere in the jumble of countless boxes and crates that I have, I probably still have at least one or two more copies. And as soon as I find that, I'll send that out to you. Yeah,
I don't need a full copy, just a burnt one, unless you charge for it.
It would be easy for me to give you a full copy if I find the ones that I have, because I remember I had like a handful of them at the time.
Wow.
So.
Well, I'm very interested.
But
I love me some music.
You know what? There's a lot of things, like you're saying, you listen to music and it helps bring you ideas. It also, it actually quiets things down for a lot of people. So depending on what kind of music you're listening to and what you're into, it could actually quiet all the noise that's inside your head from all the thoughts that are going on throughout the day. So you can actually just sit there and come up with creative solutions and creative ideas. And for myself, this happens even to this day. Even though I'm not doing things with bands anymore, I'm doing stuff with these stupid BattleBot toys. So sometimes those ideas are like, well, how am I going to create something different with the handful of bots and the parts that I have? And I will just sit there and I will rack my brain staring at these, thinking about it. And then I'll just walk away and watch a movie and not think about it. And all of a sudden, boom, light bulb flashes. And hey, I've got an idea. This might work.
Yeah. Well, once upon a time, and I still consider myself first a musician, then a doctor, then an author. So
there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Music is well, I mean, they say it soothes the savage beast. It doesn't soothe the savage guinea pig. I will tell you that. It does help us actually get a little bit more clear thought. And what's going on, Chris Persick? Good to see you. Hope that you were doing well. I got to tell you again, Doc, thank you so much for everything that you're doing as far as these books are concerned. I mean, these things are amazing. And I know there's a few other writers out there that we've talked about have done some amazing work as well. But yours really stand out to me because of all the time that you're investing in these things. And you're not even out there doing it to get rich. That's the part that I think a lot of people miss, is you're creating these timeless stories to actually be timeless stories.
Yeah, no, there's, and several of the people in chat know that when I write a character, it's based on a true personality, someone that I've known, who I know how they would react to different situations. And then I just move that personality into a book, and that person will be remembered as long as the book's around.
So let's get back into the thought process, because we actually have one more question that was supplied to us for that very concept and idea. So here we go. So you once mentioned using an iPad, your phone, and electronic devices to record your thoughts while you're on the go. Can you go into more detail on this? How do you manage to keep the reader's attention locked into what they're reading so completely? That's like a separate part of that question, it looks like.
Oh, yeah. Well, when I first started writing things, it was convenient because I have an iPad, I have a computer, I have a phone. I never write on my phone. I hate phones. I don't use it that much. Just every once in a while to text important things. But the iPad was easy, and it had a note taker, and everything was jumbled. Words were misspelled. It didn't have a good editor or anything. But what it was, I have a handicapped son, some of you know, and I used to take him. We'd go once a week to physical therapy. That was a 30-40 minute drive. And then while he's doing his therapy, I could either sit there and twiddle my thumbs or do something with the time. And I brought the iPad and I would jot down ideas and thoughts. And then it started going into, instead of just scheduling my day, it went into, I'm going to write this story. Paragraph 1 ended up, paragraph 2 ended up. Then the main part of one person of the story was completed. And then I said, well, I need to add more people into it. And then 6 months later was evolution.
So before like iPad and phones and stuff like that, did you use any of the other like the little digital recorders they used to have back in the day, or I don't know if you remember the little mini tape deck recorders?
Yeah, no, I never did anything vocally. Still haven't. The only thing I do vocally is the chapters that I release on YouTube, so I can edit them. I listen to it and I hear the pacing as I'm making them, and I just share it afterwards. But what you hear on YouTube is usually slightly different than what comes out in the book. Sometimes it's significantly different. Lady Miss can attest to that. But I've never used that. Before, I used an Apple II computer. Evolution, when I was in college, the first chapter was in that, and I lost it, but I kept it in my head. And 20 years later, it was still just something in my head. And then it came out years later. But no, it was just the Apple II was first. Before that was typewriters, and I wasn't about to write a novel in a typewriter. No way. I'm old. Give me a break.
All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. I remember when I was a kid, like one of the ways. Bone. Hey, what's up, Bone? Deej Odyssee's in the house as well. What's up, Deej? It's the guinea pig guy. Yeah, it is. DJ Ronnie G, it's good to see you.
Yeah, appreciate you guys coming by.
Also in the house.
Yep. For those of you who don't know this or just came in, this is a Q&A. I'm answering writing questions or questions on the works that I have or anything in general, even if healthcare, if you got questions on that too. But yeah, it's mostly because I just finished another book on YouTube last week. So I'll start working on all the process to get that out and released as the third book in the Blood Witch series, so people can have it hardcover, and it has changed already from what you hear on YouTube. So thank you for coming by, and feel free to ask questions. There's Mountains, good friend of mine from fellow Irishman, and he's up too late. But anyway, I'll turn it back to you. Sorry, I'm rambling.
No, you're fine, Doc. This is your stream, man. I'm just here to help you with this.
You're the MC. I want you to take charge, man.
Hey,
I don't like talking about myself.
The best I can, but I mean, it's your voice that everybody's here to hear. I'm just trying to help fill in the gap in between and try to ask some semi-intelligent questions as much as pellet eaters can actually do for you. But I got to ask you. So when you're writing these books, I mean, do you find it to actually be almost like mental therapy at times for you?
Yes, absolutely. 100%. And Steven, do I plot or pants? It's pants. Because it comes into it, the whole story pops into my head in one shot, which I guess you could say is pants. But then each individual sentence I plot to make sure it has a rhythm to it that's consistent. And I try and change that rhythm for every individual character. My goal, which I know is near impossible, would be there's actual imprints of people's communication skills. Like if you were to write a paragraph and then you compared it to somebody else's paragraph, there are programs and people who could designate this is consistent with your mental processes. They can tell when you've written something. My goal is to, as best as I can, make it to where each individual character looks like an individual person, where it wasn't written by me. I know it's impossible, but that's what I try to do. So I mostly pants, though. I very rarely do any outlines. I did do outlines when I do poetry because I'm terrible at it. And those of you who were here heard the Dragon song that have listened to the last story. And that's one of the few times I try and do poetry. And I still don't like it, but I'm going to keep it. It's just the way it's in the book. That's why I had the Dragon say it was a terrible poetry. But other than that, I don't outline.
So another thing that a lot of people talk about, I've heard Mexican Iron talk about it, is when he's reading your books, he gets actually completely wrapped up into the story. So you always get parts of the story that slow down a bit, and then other parts that just grab you and take you on a roller coaster ride. So when you're writing your stories, do you feel like there is something that you have to do to actually lock the attention of the reader in place? Is it something that you're actually looking to put forth in the novel, or is this something that just kind of naturally happens during the progression of the story?
I work at it a little bit. I'd say it's about 50-50. Once the personalities are established, it's weird. You've heard it before. When you write a character, they come to life. And once that happens, then I can back off and just let them start telling me the story. And it sounds schizophrenic, and maybe it is, but that's just how it works. But before then, like the one I'm working on now, I have to establish the ground rules. I have to have people understand where this person is in life, how they feel, describe their surroundings. And then once that's done, they start moving along at their own pace. And since I know the story's beginning and I know the story's end and most of what's in the middle, when it comes to highs and lows, that just seems to come natural. It isn't so much that I work at it, but the beginning is probably one of the ones that I do work at, make sure that's highs and lows. It's been said that for anyone to actually get hooked on a book, you have just a few paragraphs to grab them. And so those first few paragraphs have to be something that pulls people in. It has to be a high. What kind of high is it doesn't matter, just so long as it makes an emotional and a mental connection with the person, some way, shape, or form. And after that, then you could start playing a little bit more.
Writing, one of the few places where talking to yourself is a good thing, as Stephen writes. Well, not all of us have the joy of having multiple personalities, but some of us actually have a bit of a problem with it. If we have any kind of problem whatsoever, we just take care of them one round at a time. Now, look, I want you all to be a bunch of good boys out there while we're talking to Adega. Don't get carried away like this guinea pig guy is. But right back into it again. I don't know what happened there. That was completely sidetracked. I'm messing this up, Adega. I'm messing it up.
That's quite all right. It's good. I invited you. I knew what was coming.
But the way this is worded, and I completely agree with this next one, completely 100%, that you are a very humble writer. And as you have multiple books in print, but do not act in any way like your heads up your AOC, can you give some insight into why, as a writer, you should stay humble and how you do stay humble?
There's two parts of writing that I understand things, and it's one, it's for yourself, like you said. It's the catharsis. It's the moment of self-reflection, being able to express yourself. But I think the biggest thing is, for me, when someone reads it, it's It's a moment of sharing. And you know this as a musician, really good musicians know this, that when you're sharing your music, a little bit of your soul comes out.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
it's like opening up your heart to everybody so they can see who you are. And when I try and write, it's opening up to you. Someone asked me, said, why don't you do some memoirs or something? I said, read my books. That's me, because it's a little bit of my soul coming out. And for me to take arrogance into that would mean I was a conceited person, up your own AOC, as you put it. And you can see other people that's happened to and how their work has fallen off. You got the guy who's done and I've never read his stuff, but from people that have told me, the Game of Thrones stuff. And once he started getting the money and starting everything else, his stuff just dropped off. Stephen King's the same way. Some of his early stuff's good, but it's the arrogance destroys creativity. But I can't be an arrogant person. If I was still playing saxophone, yeah, I'd be completely arrogant about that. I would own every bit of it because I knew I was better than just about everybody else. But with writing, it's not sharing my own creativity, my own heart through my horn. Writing is I'm sharing with you people that I've known, and they're their own characters. I can't be arrogant over that. And if you like these people, I appreciate it, and I'm very grateful for it. And if I was taking money for it for myself, I could see that would start to lead to arrogance. But no, it's all going into a trust fund for my kids. They've already used some for emergencies. So it's I would take the fun out of it. I can't see that. I don't know. It's just not part of my nature.
I would add to that. Another thing is, like, as far as I'm concerned, one of these things about these people that just don't stay humble and they forget where they came from. I think they've forgotten a few very important details about life. Number one, you never stop learning. So if you never stop learning, that means there's always room for more improvement. And the minute you lose that aspect of yourself is when you wind up getting very conceited, that you think you know it all, you think you've done it all, and there's nothing out there that can surprise you, and that everybody else is beneath you. And I think that's what happens. It starts at that very simple level that they think they already know it all and there's nothing left to learn.
That very well could be. Could be. Got a couple questions, and Purple Valkyrie's here. Yay! She was quite a big help in designing the Blood Witch layout and stuff, and I appreciate her friendship a great deal. If I have missed any questions, please write them again. Don't feel embarrassed by it. It's because I'm sometimes get chatty and I'm stupid. DJ Ronnie G, can you combine plotting and pantsing? For example, I can see myself pantsing first and plotting more time. Whatever gets the story done. Of course you can. There's all kinds of different ways to do it. Don't ever think that you can't. Stephen Ransom says, if you're not quiet, you can't hear your characters. Absolutely. 100%. Completely. And I have to use music. I listen to Mozart often, or I listen to CO.AG, and that helps me quiet my mind so I can hear the characters. Otherwise, they don't come out, and I fumble, and it doesn't work. And I usually don't have writer's block because I've gotten pretty good at quieting my mind. But yeah, you're right. Make sure I didn't miss anything else. If you see something, Tommy, slap me upside the head and bring it up, because I don't want anyone to miss out. This is for everybody here.
I didn't see anything yet, and I actually missed that one. So,
all right. All right.
DJ Ronnie actually poses something. It's not really a question, but he says Dan Simmons also makes me question if I could ever write anything half as good. That I think that's the problem, that a lot of people won't even get started because they're already trying to compare themselves to somebody else and what they're doing. You want to be you 100%, and you're going to write something that's unique to you. So don't worry about what anybody else is doing, other than if you want to kind of get a baseline of how maybe you want your story to flow. Because one of the things Adega does with his work is he does these, they're not really time jumps, but he's doing character jumps in between. And I know a lot of people actually go through a story with one character. Do you feel like you came to a stop of everything they're doing at that point in time, and then move on to the next character whose arc may have started slightly before the ending of the last character. So you're almost kind of going back in time. Doc kind of does this thing where he goes back and forth between them, try to keep the spatial awareness of what everybody's doing in a rhythm, so to speak.
Yeah. Someone had asked me once, why, and you've seen this in evolution, it happens in a couple of them, where in the same chapter, I will have a heading that says a location or a different name, and then it goes on to their part of the story. And they says, why do I do that? And I said, well, it's pretty simple. These are happening at the exact same time. So they're in the same chapter. And they go, oh, that makes a lot of sense. And I could do that. I said, yeah, you can do that. I don't have a patent on it. Just do it. And then when it gets back to what you were saying before, even if you have an audience of one, you still have an audience. So don't feel embarrassed about what you're writing. Even if it's just you that appreciates it, you did it, you created it. It is something that never existed before. And who knows, maybe 100 years from now, someone will find that journal, that little article, and make something wonderful out of it. And it wouldn't have happened if you hadn't written those few lines or that book or that paragraph. It's important.
It absolutely is. And I mean, this goes for anything too, whether you're writing a story, whether you're drafting an idea for a comic book, for a cartoon, it doesn't matter what it is, even writing a song, because going back to bands, that's one of the things that I had seen over and over again when I was actually playing as a musician, is some of these almost unheard of bands, their songs become known later on. Why? Because they put their songs out there and they put their ideas of what their songs should sound like out there. And later on, a bigger band heard that music and then took it to the next level. And then that song became well known maybe through the other band. But then that might actually cause people to look back and, okay, well, they're giving credit to some other band. Who was it that did that originally? And they might go back and discover that other band. And they might even enjoy the original version more than the one that they were used to.
I was just talking with my wife about that. We were listening to one of her patients burns old CDs or old records for her onto CD. So we're listening to, I'm not sure if it was Creedence. I think it was Creedence. And they did a cover of Dancing in the Street. And I never would have known if it hadn't been for Van Halen when I was a kid. They did that. I'm going, oh, wait, this isn't original. Somebody else did it. I went back and listened to that. And Creedence had picked it up from someone from Motown. And it's just, each version is different. Each version is beautiful. And you never would have known. Never would have known. So well, yeah, you're right.
One of the bands that I think of when I think about songs that I'd never heard of before, and one of them was actually Metallica, and they were doing Am I Evil? And I remember looking through, and I was like, what's this band Diamondback that they're giving credit to? And then I went back and found that 70s version of Am I Evil by Diamondback, and I was like, that is actually kind of interesting sounding. Yeah, I think the Metallica one sounds better, but that's interesting. Right. And I've actually run across that with a bunch of different bands now. Like some of them I didn't even expect. There were punk bands that did like copies of earlier punk bands and just redid their songs. There's a lot of interesting stuff out there, but it's getting back to the point. If you don't put that original idea out there, other people won't be able to experience it. Other people may not be able to add to it or maybe even improve on that idea if you don't put it out there.
Here's something for you, and it'll bring the point home. And my son taught me this. I mentioned him just earlier. I have a handicapped son. He's severely handicapped, but everything's up here. He just, think of a 9-month-old that can't talk, but he's 25 upstairs. He was going to school, and there was a special needs class that they had. He went all day. They took him on the bus, and they did crafts and different things. And for earning extra money for his class. They were doing a project of making scarves. They made them of different types of linen. They would decorate them in different colors. And they went to Avery and said he used a communication device and some hand signals to help communicate. He doesn't sign language, but there's some things. And he kept pulling out these designs and wanted them done. And they says, that's not going to work. Those colors don't work. Don't do that. You can't do that. And he kept insisting. They figured, well, we'll make a couple of them just for him. They had to make all of them that way because his was the most popular because they were brilliant. They were beautiful. He designed my last house, the floor plan. I mean, we had the house beforehand, but it was the flooring, the walls, the paint, everything. And it was gorgeous. And no one would have known if they didn't listen to him. And that's somebody who has the most difficult time to communicate. So you out there who have the ability to hear or see or write or what have you, there is brilliance in you in one form or another. And if it isn't shared, we will never know.
That is just a point taken and driven home right there, Doc. I don't think that could have been said any better whatsoever.
I showed you a picture of him when he was at that wrestling match. No, it wasn't you. I showed it to ETEP. Mm-hmm. It made him cry. But anyway.
It's a beautiful thing, though. It is a beautiful thing. And there's a lot of people that actually will downplay others because of many different reasons, whether it's because they look a certain way or maybe because they talk a certain way. Or maybe they just don't think they're quite as smart. And you get these people that will downplay those people and they won't give them a chance and they won't give them the room to actually grow and be able to share their ideas. But when that person is not being put down and they have the chance to actually put their ideas out there, you never know how brilliant they could be, especially if that person doesn't feel like they're given the opportunity to put those ideas out there. And that's where a lot of people, maybe some of our people in our chat right now, maybe you feel like you just don't have it in you because maybe somebody told you you're not good enough to do it. The only person you got to listen to is yourself. You are the only one that could determine whether it's actually worth it to you to pursue writing something, creating something. Everybody has got something in them that is actually profound and something that is bright and brilliant. Even this no good rotten pig right here that YouTube seems to hate. Apparently, I have something bright and spectacular in me. I just haven't figured out what it is yet. One of these days I might. But everybody has something, and you won't know what it is, and you won't know how profound it is unless you put it out there for other people to possibly really latch on to and enjoy or to expand on what you're doing.
Absolutely. That is completely correct.
God, I almost sounded intelligent there for a moment. I really knocked that off. People are going to start expecting too much of me.
Darn it, they can actually see through the facade and all those multiple personalities.
Yeah. They're not multiple. They're real. So I want to talk a little bit more about the books here with the Evolution series. So one of the things I did like is I know Mexican Iron Man and a few others, once again, talking about the pacing of the books. I really do like how you have moments that kind of slow down. So you can kind of get into this rhythm, whether it's you're getting to know a new character or you're getting to understand the planet they're in or even the location that they're at. And then once you've got all that stuff, that part of the story down, then you start to pick it up again. And you start to really fast pace some of the story where you almost feel like you're hooked and you can't stop reading because the movement of the story just seems to pick up and get a little bit faster. And I know, once again, you said that was part of the story design. That's just where the characters took you. But is that part of your personality? Like, as far as like when you're into the slow mode and you're stopping, you're looking around, you're smelling the roses, and then when it's time to move and get things doing, then you pick up the pace. Is that how you kind of wrote it like that?
That, and sometimes some people have picked it up when it's a little bit slower. Hey, Purple, if you wanted to come on and talk about Blood Witch, I'll send you an invite. Just let me know. But when it's slower, there's a couple of different things. There always needs to be a point where you understand the character a little better. And the slow moments are points where I can express more of their quiet time personality. I also use it for foreshadowing. But I don't do foreshadowing to a point where when you get towards an end, you'll know what the ending is going to be, but it will make sense when you get there. I find it, I hate watching a movie where you already know the end, you know, where you're watching a series. Because I recently, and I didn't pay for it, I know some pirates who introduced me to that TV show Wednesday. And everyone said some good things about it, so I decided to check it out. And I knew who the villain was after the second episode. And, you know, granted, everything went pretty well, and I appreciate the writing and the changing of the writing done by the main character. But I want the setup to make things misdirection. And sometimes the quiet times help you do that. You know, it's foreshadowing, but it's sometimes misdirection, but it makes sense. Kind of complicated, but I like to do that. Let me see. I don't know if she said she wanted in or not, but if she doesn't, that's fine. I'm going to copy a link.
Rorschach's Journal, 5/14/2023. Heard Doc say something about pirating. Going to have to investigate further.
If you show up purple, it's fine. If you don't, that's fine. Don't feel obligated. Please don't. You've done more than enough for me as it is. Those of you who have the Blood Witch, you'll know how the layout is. At one point, I sat with her and my artist, and she has quite a library that she's gone through of reading, and she knows how fantasy works, what doesn't work. And so I picked her brain to see how we could lay it out, and I was deeply, deeply grateful for that. And she's gone through quite a bunch of my stuff. So feel free if you wanted to come in and talk about it. But let's go ahead. Like you said, if we wanted to talk about the book specific, that's fine. I don't mind spoilers today. So if you guys want spoilers, if you want any of that, let me know, and we'll go through it.
Stephen is saying, is that why mystery novels are so successful? When they're good, they're really good.
I would imagine so. I haven't ever read a mystery novel. I've never. But if there's a well-written book, as in the language of it is not fundamentally silly, which most books are nowadays, and we know it because we know the type of authors that are out there. They write like they talk instead of writing to communicate, which are two different things, if that makes sense to you. Like, we're going through conversational speech, but with writing, you have to convey an image, you have to convey an emotion, and you have to sometimes convey sound. And it's not easy to do when you're just conversing with somebody, because you could see them picking things up. You're just, the point of speaking is giving off the sound. We're writing, they're not picking up the sound. And a lot of people just only learn from audible stuff. So to get to the end of a book and not to have it already known to you, and to have it as a rewarding ending, I think is probably the greatest fun I have out of a book. I love the endings of all my books. I think The Reach was my favorite of all. But then again, I had there's a couple people that told me it's the best book ever written. I don't believe it. I think they're just being kind to me. But I found that ending to be the most rewarding one that I've ever done. So no, if it's a mystery novel, you got to be real careful with the foreshadowing, not to give something away. When you do it, you got to make it to where it has multiple strings that people can pull on and never come to a conclusion until you get to where you expose it. So anyway, that's how I feel about it.
Or you get some of these ones where they actually don't really fully give you a real conclusion, but you get hinted at various conclusions, and you almost kind of got to draw your own ideas of what it is. Like one of the movies that did that from a book was actually Total Recall. Now, the way the originally Total Recall ends, you are still not 100% sure. Did he really go through all this, or was he still sitting on the chair at Total Recall?
Right. Right. Or what's that other one? A Bruce Willis movie. Darn it, what is it? I See Dead People? That one wasn't too bad for a movie. It kept you guessing till the very end.
Hey, Loki's in the house too. What's up, Loki?
Yeah, you have a link if you want it in, Loki.
Oh yeah, I got that one. Yeah, his head up his own AOC. Yep. I got that one.
Yeah, we already went through that. 6 cents. That's right, Purple. It was a 6 cents. But like I said, the end of the book, and when a lot out of the evolution stuff, where would you rank the first one, Children of the Directive?
See, this is one of the things. A lot of times when I'm reading books, the first book is always going to be my favorite because that's an introduction. And it's the same thing with me for movies and stuff like that. The introductions are usually the ones that pull me into it, and those almost always wind up being my favorites every single time. There have been a few exceptions, but the same thing with this. Evolution is the one that pulled me in. Evolution is the one that got me hooked. So that's going to be number one, always. I would say after that, it's kind of like a toss-up between the Children of the Directive and Resolution. And the middle book is actually sitting on the end for me because there was stuff in the middle book I really liked, but there was stuff in Resolution and the Children of the Directive that explains a lot more about some of the characters, like May and everybody, that was really interesting, and it was really thought-provoking. Like, okay, I can kind of see why this character acts that way now. It makes a lot more sense given all this information that I'm receiving about that character. So, yeah, Evolution is still number one for me, and then right after that, it's a toss-up between Resolution and Children of the Directive.
Okay, the reason why I brought up Children of the Directive was because that is, I think, other than the epilogue, I think the ending is almost anticlimactic because you've read the other ones and there's always a big event at the end of each book. But at the end of Children of the Directive, it's like we just hit a calm spot. There's no big hoorah. It mellows out until you get to the epilogue, which is, wait, this doesn't relate to the story at all. If you were to read in line, what is this droid all about? It doesn't make sense. I mean, you pick it up in Revolution. But anyway, I was just curious because I think that for endings, that one is probably the most mellow out of all of them.
Well, sometimes you actually there's nothing wrong with a mellow ending, depending on how the flow of the entire story is going. Because if you have a book where it's hills and valleys the entire time through the whole book, and it doesn't really slow down at all, that there's always something like really amazing going on or something really captivating going on. If you come to a conclusional end for that book, and it's just a mellow and calm ending, there's actually nothing wrong with that. And it makes sense in the context of the way the rhythm of the rest of the book is going, because you don't necessarily need a big event at the end of a book that's already had a whole bunch of events in it.
Right. Any other questions on the list or questions that you have besides the list or questions in the chat? Otherwise, I do want to briefly talk about where I'm going with writing after that. Does the panel
think that the success of The Martian was due to it? Believability.
Due to its believability? I'm trying to remember if I saw The Martian. Do you know that movie? Because I get them confused. There was the one with Val Kilmer. No, that was Red Planet. I don't think I saw The Martian. I don't know.
I don't recall it, but see, unfortunately, I do have the same problem with a lot of movies. Like I was hanging out with my buddy Slasher last night, and we were doing a No Retreat, No Surrender. I vaguely remember the movie, but I couldn't put together what happened in the movie until I sat down with him and I started watching the first 5 minutes of the film, and then I was like, "Oh yeah, I remember this now." Sometimes
right.
that happens, especially with something you haven't seen in a very long time. It's there, but you need something to kind of jog it loose.
Right.
Unfortunately, I don't recall anything about The Martian. It's not to say I didn't see it, but it's just not hitting any gongs for me right now.
And DJ Ronnie G says it's a Matt Damon movie, and I have seen very few of them. Even like his movies. What was it? Those spy thriller things. Bourne Supremacy. Yeah, the Bourne stuff. I saw the first one, and that was it. I don't know why. I kind of the first one was kind of enjoyable, but the answer for The Martian, I don't know.
That's kind of like the John Wick movies. I mean, everybody keeps telling me you got to watch John Wick. You got to watch John Wick. I haven't watched one of them. I don't know. It's certain things that I'm interested in as far as action and everything, and other stuff I look at it and like, I don't know. Maybe one day, not right now.
Yeah. I'll have to look at that Martian, Ronnie, one of these times, because I don't watch much of anything.
DJ Ronnie G, a man gets stranded in Mars, and in order to survive, he comics the phrase, "I'm going to science the shit out of this." Sounds like somebody else that we know,
right? Right. Not miss that one. All right. Well, if you guys are thinking of any questions, or even if you're not, I want to briefly go over what I'm working on now. I am still fuddling through Doorways of Nor. The story's there, but I don't know when I'm going to share it with you guys. It's a story I want to tell, but I don't know if I'm ever going to release it on YouTube. But right now, we're going to start next week with Ellie, Blood Witch History Ellie. And then after that will be the one set 2,000 years after Veronica. And there's a change. Those of you who've gone through the Blood Witch and have read the epilogue will know that the gift of magic, the mage star, disappears. It's gone. The magic had disappeared, except for it ended up remaining in the Blood Witch family. And so instead of being set in a medieval style, it was going to be more, think of like you mix Victorian, late Victorian, not Victorian, Art Deco type, the 40s type, mix that with still a little bit of the Victorian. It's they're coming along. They have guns, they have airships, they have a few things. They also have horrible government intrigue, and a lot of what we have seen or know of in our current day is going to be mirrored there. And hopefully it's going to be the most unexpected or surprising book of all of them. But may start seeing that one show up on my YouTube channel in about a year, maybe less. But if something happens to me, because you guys know I'm sick, if something happens to me, there already is a lady who has the outline, and I had given her permission once that if there was a problem, that she could go ahead and write it. She knows my voice, kind of, sort of. You'll be able to tell it's not me, but at least she knows the story for the most part. The overall, she doesn't know the characters like I do, but at least you'll know where I was going. But Ellie starts next week. I already read the prologue to Loki, and he seemed pretty excited about it. But those of you who went through Andros, this is 200 years after Andros. And we start with the new mage cycle and more blood witches. And this one, I'm going to explore a different type of personality, someone who has a mental illness. And it's not one to where she's psychotic, but she has a lot of struggles. And you'll see why. Once you hear the next week, Sunday's prologue, you'll know why she's messed up. So it should be fun. It's something I hadn't explored with any of them per se. So this will be good. I mean, I kind of did in Resolution where, that whole Marcus arc where he had to deal with the, the remnants of the Directive, the Calso family and their dark secrets. It's and kind of damage.
And the betrayal that was in there.
Yeah. It's kind of like in that damaged area. I guess Deba kind of had something similar. It's a horrific trauma to the brain, and that's what Ellie's going to have to deal with for different reasons. But it's kind of like that.
I want to ask you a question here, Doc, real quick. So between these two different worlds that you got going on with the Evolution series and with the Witch series, is there any kind of cross-pollination between the characters between the two different series of books?
No, all of them are unique to each book.
No, I mean like the personalities, like you know what I mean, the types of personalities that you have in there, that you don't find any of them kind of crossover and have.
They may have similar features, but each person in each book is completely unique, and the only one out of the books that even resembles me would be Marcus.
Okay.
If there was one that I would take to as he's like me, it would be Marcus. And that's in the Evolution. But no, there's not one person in one who is equivalent, or it isn't someone that I remembered from one that is equivalent in the other. I didn't do that. They may have similar, but people are people. Good people are good people, bad people are bad people. So no, that's a good question though. I often wondered if I had done that, and I went back and I thought all the different characters. And no.
Well, I'm coming from a point where the only stories I've heard about from the Blood Witch type stuff, the Uganda witches and everything like that, is stuff that I've heard on your channel, since I haven't had a chance to read anything.
Right.
I didn't get the Blood Witch yet, so I haven't had a chance to read through it. So I just thought that would be an interesting question to ask from my aspect of only knowing one side of your storytelling with the sci-fi fantasy stuff.
Right. Now, there were a pair similar in there, and they remind me of brothers. In the Ulgonsah, there was Giffy, who was the very first Blood Witch, first one to realize what was going on. And he has a certain personality type that was similar to Andros, except Giffy was all about family and loyalty and kingdom. But the reckless abandon, the free for all, the free spirit, it was same in both. Andros is the same way, except he was a lot more, I would say, selfish with his time. He didn't want to be part of the family, didn't want anything to do with the royal family. He was just his own duck. He had his own goals. So other than that, when it came to, if you saw both of them at a party, they would be the life of the party, both of them. So those are the closest, and they are based on brothers that I know. So, all right. You think so, Lady Miss? There's always sadness at the end of a good book.
I understand exactly what she's saying. I mean, there are quite a few times where I'm getting close to the end of the book, and it's not to say that I haven't enjoyed the book, but you get that, when you're getting to the end of a really good book, it's almost you kind of slow down reading it because God, I want this to last a little bit longer because I know once I get to the end, it's either I'm rereading the whole thing again, or I'm going to have to put it down for a while before I can pick it up and start reading again. I mean, that's
Okay.
what I know I get with certain stories. I mean, I did the same thing with all 4 of your books that I got from the Evolution series. I did the same thing when I got towards the end of the Lord of the Rings, because there were parts in the Lord of the Rings that just kind of, I can't wait to get through this chapter or whatever. But once I got towards the end of that book, it was like, God, this is really getting good towards the end, and I kind of slowed down a little bit and extended it longer than I should have. But I've done that with a lot of novels, and even novels when you've reread them a few times. Like when I read Evolution a few times, there was a point where I got towards a certain part of the story, and I just kind of slowed down because I know I was getting close to the end.
Well, for you personally, what kind of do you have, besides what we've covered, do you have any questions on the story? If there's any spoilers or anything that you want, those of you who don't, I won't be too pinpoint, but let's go ahead and get into it. That's for you personally.
I know I don't want to ask any spoilers, but I do want to ask you what gave you the idea for some of the designs for some of the characters and for the way that some of the races play off, because I know for me, when I'm reading a lot of your stuff, because I come from that old school, like sci-fi, science fantasy type realm, with the Battlestar Galactica, the old Buck Rogers, Flash Gordon, and all that stuff. Was any of that stuff any kind of influence whatsoever in the way you were designing ships or the way you were designing the races in it?
Races, I wanted some to be familiar and some to be completely foreign. Like when you'll find this when the Echoes of Nor comes out, you're going to see some really bizarre races. But with the Evolution series, the biggest 2, well, there was the 2 was the Nebe, and you figured this out already. Ni was the name of the creatures before they were genetically changed, and Bay is the Nor word for meaning created. So you have Ni Bay, On Bay, Hax Bay, and we get into the On Bay in Echoes of Nor. So they, they're engineered, so they gotta have some type of similarity to something that's common. And then I wanted to get something a little bit bizarre, but still really interactive with the characters, and that's where the Gundam came from. Think of people that are half spider, but they're small, and just like spider species, the male are much smaller than the female. But they're highly spiritual. As bizarre as they look, as violent as they are to their food, they're a very spiritual people. So I wanted to take something just a little bit different direction. And again, like I said, with Echoes of Nor, it goes quite different. And then the Sem, which is, I can't remember if I think they're in Resolution briefly. They were the ones that the Gundam got rescued from, as the Sem. I talk about them, and they are quite bizarre as well. But when it comes to ships, I came to more practical. As much as I like looking at the different ships in different universes, the Star Trek ships make the least amount of sense to me. Or not, yeah, Star Trek ships. The Klingons almost make the most sense. But you look at the Federation ships where they have these nacelles, and they'll have the main body, and then they have the saucer section. Why is the saucer section separated from the main base? It just did. You're in space. You can make any design you want. The Borg seemed more practical. But I wanted it to be also something that would be 1,000 years in our future. So with Stargate and those ships, the movie, the ships looked pretty aesthetic, and which I thought was cool. But when it came to the other ships of the different races, they didn't seem quite functional to me, as if it was truly in space. So the ships that I designed, I wanted them for high amount of function and ease of creation, and the humans with their robotics and technology can build them really, really quick. It's a matter of putting people in them. That's the problem. It's just a matter of getting enough people to populate them. Even though the Stellar Union has vast amount of people, that they just didn't have a military up until they needed it. So the ship's design, think of the sleekness of a submarine minus the port, or the
Tower.
The tower. That's what it is, minus the tower. And the two reasons for that: one is there's no need to have pipes on the outside. You want something secure, some type of metallurgy that is done to relieve stress from space, from radiation, from weapons. But also, and you probably picked this up, I hate cannons in space. You know, the boom, 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 boom. That doesn't make any sense to me at all, especially with if you're going to use energy weapons, I don't see a recoil at all. So the ships have these dome structures that they can oscillate their focus, but also they are magnetically held on the outer portion of the ship, and they move like drones anywhere on that smooth surface. Instead of having to turn the ship to face, these things can all converge on one side and focus in a single direction. And then, of course, when Revolution, when they have the new technology that they start using, it comes into play as there as well. But I wanted something to look that matched something in the future, not just little points where it comes out of the ship, but I wanted something where they can be mobile. They could also be used as defensive shields if need to be, to absorb any kinetic damage. So yeah, just think of like submarines with periodic ports on them for various different ships, whether they be fighters or supply ships or different things that could come out of them. With the supermassive carriers, they can actually bring in even small corvettes, or manufacturing, like the Abraxas ships can make dreadnoughts or what have you out in space. So they're going to look a little bit different, but they can manufacture things instead of having to make trips back and forth to Rhea shipyard or Braxton shipyard to get new parts or ships. They can build them as they need them. Same with weapons. So that was my push to make things look as sleek, as clean, as futuristic in the person's mind as I could. Big, on the other hand, was meant to look like a like a jerk. Like, you mess with him, you're in trouble. He's meant to look like an old fighter, Earth fighter with inverted wings.
I remember the very stark contrast between him and some of the other space vehicles that you were actually describing there, because he had a lot of sharp angles.
Yep.
And you made note of that multiple times, how he had very, very sharp angles. And the first thing that popped in my head when I started hearing sharp angles, I started thinking of like the stealth fighters, stuff like that, with sharp angles.
Kind of. But his wings are pretty aggressive. April Clemens, the one who designed it, she wanted something that looked masculine and violent, and that's how he came out. I mean, spooky, not necessarily violent, like where you're seeing one of the Gundam ships or a Robotech vessel or those type of things where you got guns and booms and everything. But the shape itself and the color, if you see it, it's just barely catching a glimmer of black. And before evolution, the silver lining, and then turn to the turquoise with the red afterwards. And it's just supposed to be a menace. But in reality, his AI and personality take over, and he becomes Edric's best friend. Hey, May. May is awesome. She really is. And we're the reach is coming. Trust me, it's coming. It's some things you just have to be patient with. I got a lot of things in the fire. Were there any questions?
You got a few comments here from a few different people, starting with Chris Perza at 734.
All right, please.
I don't think Andros finished with sadness. It was cathartic and a realization of acceptance towards a conclusion, especially when Vahani said the dragon sleeps with us.
I love that. Sorry, I love that ending. And that was something I tried my best to hide the fact. I thought people would think that the Oten would come back, the Metal Eater, because the way he talked, I may not show up. I should be here. I may not be here. I left it open as it's one of those things of foreshadowing. Someone in the past will probably come back, and you think it's him, but it wasn't. And when Va said his goodbyes the first time, it almost left it open, like, well, maybe you'll see him again, but you weren't going to see half the pack of dragons show up. And then I wanted it to be very serene. It was something that Danilee knew was coming. She had seen it a long time, and she was very good at keeping secrets. And I appreciate you saying that. I really do.
A few of the other comments, they were talking about some of the stuff we were talking about as far as ship design, where you were mentioning the Star Trek designs. DJ Ronnie G, it can make sense to segregate radioactive stuff into a secondary hull, but they also have a lot of random facilities in both sections, which sort of defeats such a purpose. Right.
That's my point. I can understand, and that's why the Klingon ships, I actually appreciate them, because they put the nacelles completely away from the living quarters. Even the birds of prey are kind of like that. But the rest of them it really didn't make sense, because if it did, how can you have a Defiant where those nacelles are right inside the ship? It doesn't make sense.
And that leads right into what he says next: being too close to a warp nacelle,
losing battery,
being next to an incinerator.
Right. Give me just a sec. I got to change because my battery's going out.
No problem.
So
no
I can't
problem.
hear
Go
anything
ahead,
for a
take
second.
care of what you need to take care of. Stephen Ransom adds, I also saw the Federation designs as being like an insect standing on the water of subspace, but inverted. That is an interesting way to look at it.
The sound is going to be different now that I changed. So hopefully it sounds a little better. I don't know which is better.
I don't know. I'm half deaf, so it all sounds about the same to me.
A musician who's half deaf. We call you Mozart.
Could you imagine that?
Or no, it wasn't Mozart. It was Bach. No, that would suck. And that people have asked me often, hey, PJ's here. Hey, PJ. Thanks for coming. And Vinny's here. Awesome.
What's up, guys?
But think of it in a question for you, too. If you were to lose one of your senses, sight or hearing, which would you pick? People ask me that, and they think I'm a fool. I would rather lose my sight than my hearing any day of the week. I can't imagine living life without hearing. Well, I hear the dogs bark, hearing music, hearing my kids and my wife's voices. I would much rather stumble in darkness and keep my hearing than the other way around.
And see, this is one of those things, since I've lived through damn near my entire life. I started losing my hearing when I was like maybe about 7-8 years old in my left ear. And it's
sorry to hear that.
I've lost over 50% of my hearing in that ear, and it's always been bad. So to me, losing my hearing, probably, as far as like playing music, yeah, that would suck. But everything else that I do, I'm very hands-on with everything, and I need my eyes to see to do all the hands-on type stuff that I do. So to me, if I was going to choose one to lose, it would definitely be hearing over, vision.
Gotcha. And that's why most people are, but but there's it just does something to me. It really does. The music, or all the sounds, to sit quiet by the ocean, to hear the roar, in a forest, to hear the wind moving the branches. And even I spent time spelunking in natural and man-made caves, and to go deep, turn off the light, and the only thing you hear is your own heartbeat. I would miss that. That's just me. All right. Anything else in the chat that we may have missed?
Let's see. They were talking about the continuation of the.
Oh, I want to. If May's still here while you're doing that, I wanted to show her something. This is one of my avatars. She made that. And I think it was wonderful. And it's going to be part of a book cover. It's going to share reflective images front and back. One from my artist and one from her. So anyway, okay, May, just to give you a heads up, the person who commented below you, Vinny Art, he says very cool. He is a phenomenal artist, and if he says it's very cool, it's very cool.
I mean, that video art guy, he's all right and stuff. I mean, we have a few books by him. I mean, I wouldn't say he's a cast meow or anything. I'm just messing with you, Vinny.
Joker Pig always has to be a jerk. It's not his fault. He comes out and he just says mean things. Guys, if you haven't checked out Vinny, you should definitely check out his work. He spends a lot of time and a lot of his waking hours to actually put out some amazing comics and some amazing work, man. Amazing guy. And of course,
just to prove it to you, here's the Blood Witch. He wanted to be part of it, and I could not say no. That is the Sword of Tauren. And I appreciate him for it very much, more than he realizes.
Wow, Lady Mist. Lost my sense of smell for 9 months. Thanks to COVID, very happy that came back soon. Wow. Yeah.
We're not interfering with your show yet. Once it starts in an hour and a half or an hour and 15 minutes, right, for Vinny's show? Or is it in 15 minutes? Because if it's in 15 minutes, I'm going to cut this off.
Usually he runs at 9. I wasn't.
So it'll be 8 o'clock. Okay, so we got time.
Yeah.
We got over
I wasn't
now.
even 100% sure if he was actually still going to run it tonight, because that was actually still open for debate the last I heard.
Oh, gotcha.
But see, there goes another thing. That's another reason why I can't lose my my site. How am I going to irritate all the people on Twitter?
And you need to see your little piggies.
Exactly.
The collective needs to be able to be fed, and you have to see to feed them. So,
he says 9 p.m., so he's going to still run at 9.
All right. Okay. But no, I appreciate everyone in there. May for the art, Vinny for the art, Lady Mist she's been here the whole ride. And she's awesome. I was able to repay it one time in a small degree where I let her preview some stuff that wasn't available. But she's a superstar. And then Mountains, all through the reach, he was giving me feedback from him and his wife that were listening to it. And, we're friends as much as friends could be without ever shaking hands, and across an ocean. But everyone in here, I appreciate very much, very much. So thank you for showing up. But yeah, you guys know I don't do these as often, and I don't get into detail about things. So if you have something to ask, now's the time to do it. We'll wrap things up in a couple minutes or so.
Yeah, I don't have anything else to ask because I don't like spoilers. So there's nothing I don't want to ask in advance myself. I'm waiting to see if anybody else pops something into the chat. But I mean, I do want to thank you again for the amazing work that you're putting out there. And I really, again, thank you for taking care of me when I was looking for that last book. I mean, that means more than you could possibly know. It meant a lot to me. Loki, brother, we appreciate you letting us be part of all this. Yeah,
no, it's easy with Loki. He really is. He's family. He is my brother, even though I was adopted. He's from a totally different mom and dad, and we only met once. He's my brother. He really is, and I'd do anything for him. And he's helped me out. He was the one. For those of you who know the story, when the publishers were fighting over me and I settled on one, and the editors were having issues, I used him as a sounding board over and over again to make sure I wasn't losing my mind. And he has no idea how grateful I am for that. It was a big help, and I love him for it. I appreciate it very much, not just for that, for a lot of things, but it was he's a blessing to my life.
Mountains of Alicia. Yeah, The Reach for me was one of the best books I've ever read. Well, listened to.
See, they say that, and I find it hard to believe. I did pour more into that book than I did anything. It was one of the ones where I did a serious exercise because I thought, I was getting, by all record books, I should have been dead 5-6 years ago, and I'm still going, and I may beat this stupid cancer. And I figured if I was going to do one where it took a lot out of me, even though it still had to be done in shorthand, because all of my books are done in shorthand, I was going to do that, and I wanted it to hit everybody. And when it comes out in paper, you'll look at it and look specifically in every chapter and every paragraph, and sometimes in every sentence. I'm trying to speak to someone, help them see, help them feel. That way, all three different areas of emotion or mental process or sound hits people, because everyone learns different ways. And if I can hit every single one every single time, then I draw people in. And I think that was helpful. But I also wanted to make something, especially for Fauna's world, I wanted it to be as bizarre and different as I could take it without making it into something that wouldn't bring in emotion. You don't know the story unless you've gone back and listened to it. But basically, there's two different universes and two different people that, because of a need, some type of cosmic resonance, they were able to start communicating complete different dimensions and completely different types of life forms. But they were able to reach, and that's why the hand that she made for that image is so brilliant, absolutely brilliant. It's still, every once in a while I go back and I listen to the last chapter in the epilogue, just because it was an emotional work for me, and I still get emotions off of it. And I always listen to the music, because when it came to CO.AG Alan, massive help, just because he makes music. And he says I help inspire him. It's like I said, it's a symbiosis. I create, he creates, I create. We feed off of each other. But I'll go back, because the Reach music is very special, very, very special. So if you guys want to hear something that's just, it'll really open your mind to literally new universes, go to my playlists, look up the Reach, go all the way down to the bottom, and it'll have all the songs that were specific for the Reach. And that he just said, hey, every once in a while he'd come up and say, I made this for you. You inspired this. I made this for you. You inspired this. And he's brilliant. He's totally underrated. And if for some reason in my lifetime someone decides to make a criterion or some type of movie or something out of my stuff, I would say no, unless Alan is in charge of the music. I absolutely would. There's no way I would let anyone touch it unless he did the music. He has to. he's that big of a part of what I've created. So I appreciate him. So those of you who haven't checked my links, and you'll see CO.AG, and he does a wide variety of things. No, he's brilliant and a good friend. So I can't say thank you enough to him for what he's done. So,
speaking of thanking May Flores, thank you, Adega, for sharing your world with us. DJ Ronnie G actually has 2 questions here, Adega.
Okay.
Adega and Tommy, what are your favorite fictional starships? And also, if you have a favorite real rocket or space probe.
All right. For me, favorite real rocket or space probe would be Sputnik. Believe it or not. Elegant, simple, and it did the job. Fictional, because of the design, they look hideous, but I think they're brilliant. And you guys have heard me, if there's a sci-fi that I like, it's Ian Douglas, and he does Space Carrier. And think in the way he designed it, and it's primitive compared to what's in the evolution, and it is almost a natural progression in space travel because we think of radiation and everything. So they made ships where they have water shielding. And think of a half dome up front, and all of it is water, and behind it is the living quarters. So it's almost like a teardrop moving through space. And he gets into how it works without gravity. The fighters that he uses in there are really cool. But it would be one of the space carriers from his book that I think is just awesome. Give me just a second. I'll actually show you one. So I'm going to go grab one.
As far as myself, I can't say that there's any real world rocket or probe that is a favorite of mine. However, as far as a fictional starship, it would have to be the Yamato from Star Blazers.
I love the Yamato. That's a close second. That's looking at it from behind. And then down on the bottom, just below the big one, you could see 2 more. That's his ships. And I love the design just because of the science, not because of how they specifically look. But I'm kind of a science guy. Fixing my camera, that's what I'm doing. Anyway, sorry, go ahead. Yamato.
Yeah, no, the Yamato from Star Blazers, like that is my favorite, because I mean, that was something that I grew up with too, 70s cartoons like that. So I would say right after that, you're probably getting into some of the Battlestar Galactica stuff with the Vipers. I really like that sleek design that they had for the Vipers, and that extends over into one of my favorite franchises of all times, which was the Transformers, the early Transformers stuff. What they did with Sunbow is they kind of took that Viper jet design, and that's what the original Decepticons had. They had this like Tetra jet design, just like from Battlestar Galactica. So, I mean, the Viper would be a close second, but the Yamato still stands out as just something that's just, it's timeless. The look of that starship from that cartoon.
Yeah. And another thing about the Yamato too, I imagine the sense of pride that the Japanese still have for that ship, even though it's at the bottom of the ocean. All right. Was there something else that we missed?
I think we got all the questions. People are just giving their thoughts on everything. As far as I could see, I don't think I missed anything. Mountains of Elysium said, "Taking my friend, the Reach was a work of beauty. Flora's world was such a wonderful and unique concept."
It's fauna, but that's okay. And thank you. You guys are saying some nice things. And if for some small way I've made your lives more interesting and taken you to new worlds and new places and shared with you people that I've known, I'm very flattered that you enjoy it. Very, very much so.
Well, we here at the Guinea Pig Collective are telling you now, Doc, you're not allowed to go anywhere until you feel like you've written every last story. We won't allow it. We will send the pigs over to fully assimilate you. so you won't die.
Well, if I get the time, there is one more in my head, and it's unrelated to anything I've ever done. It's in R.C. Scott. I'm going to be stepping into his territory. It's kind of a suspense horror. It has to deal with. I don't want to get too specific because I don't want to give anyone the idea and they run with it. I know there's been things kind of similar to it, but it's basically when. Nah, I don't want to get too much into it because it's different than the way it sounds when I use words. Again, for me, writing things is easier to explain than using words. It has to deal with, it's almost like The Reach, only in a dark way, where there is another universe or dimension and they know about ours vaguely. And they start mining it for spiritual resources, we'll say, without knowing, but still completely malevolent. And it's a struggle on our side to find out what the heck's happening because it doesn't make sense. It's all bizarre. It's from a different universe. So the principles of physics, the understanding of natural law don't apply. And the people that are involved in this are going to be dumbfounded. So that's long range if I get to it. So dabbling in something that will challenge me again.
Oh, well, that's what we all do. We all got to challenge ourselves in some way, shape, or form. I challenge myself every day not to say something completely ridiculous, even though I know some of these people deserve it.
Well, when someone deserves it and you go after them, you do it in such a beautiful way. I appreciate your aggression and the school bus memes.
Oh, I can't help it. Some of these people are just absolutely, they're beyond reproach. And you know what? I really find them to be much lower than a guinea pig. I could say something really foul and vile to back that up, but I think I shall not. May you stay very blessed to cross paths.
Okay. May it's the Blood Witch Andros is one. If you haven't caught up with that, you might want to go through it. It's a slower story, but you know what a book Bible is. It's different than a book. It's not plot driven per se. I wanted to explain the Blood Witch world in a story instead of just having an encyclopedia where people look things up. And so Andros was my vehicle to explain their world, their ancient history, how everything came to be, and explain the city of Andros itself, because I hinted at it in the Blood Witch in just a few lines when Veronica was doing her military service. She's a medic, for those of you who don't know, who haven't read the book, for a short time. It helps with the curse. And AG was on a campaign going south, and they had pushed very far, almost to where Andros was. And the conversation was, did you see the spires of Andros? And she said she couldn't, but other people could. So I wanted to explain that because that city in my mind was quite alive for me at the time, and I always wanted to bring it up. And it explains the world a little bit more, how things were created and who these people are. So, but no, everyone, thank you for sharing this evening with me and let me talk a little bit. And thank you very much, Tommy, for agreeing to this. I deeply appreciate it. You're a good friend. You're a good man. And your honesty.
You got to stop saying that kind of stuff. People are going to start thinking a little bit better of me and expect more out of me. I'm trying to keep this low key, Doc.
Wrong pig. There. But no, I do appreciate it very much. And thanks. Everyone,
my pleasure. My pleasure. I mean, when you asked me if I could do this, I mean, of course I was going to say yes. I'm not. Yeah, this is a chance to get to talk to you a little bit about your books and other people's questions that they wanted to ask to bring up to you as well. I mean, sure, I'm on board for this. I have enjoyed everything that you've done with these books. And once again, you're a sounding board too. If I wanted to show you like initial concepts of what I was working on with my Guinea Pig Collective book, I mean, you and a few other people that I really trust, I appreciate your feedback when I send stuff out and let you know, hey, well, what do you think about this? Well, what do you think about that idea? So you guys have helped me out just as much. Why would I not want to be here for you for this?
Even still, I'm very grateful. I'm grateful for everyone out there, and I'm very thankful, truly thankful, that in some small way I've been able to share myself with you, and I'm glad you enjoy it. So let's call it. I've got to find how to end this broadcast. Again, thanks everyone. Thanks Tommy. If there's nothing else, have a great evening.